Welcome to the Amber Nectar podcast, discussing the things we think about Hull City AFC.
Hello there, welcome along to the Amber Nectar podcast, and it's a special season of podcasts because as well as talking about everything that's going on at Hull City in the present, it is also a season when we will be looking back to 10 years ago, still regarded by many as our finest hour, the season under Phil Brown when we were promoted to the Premier League for the first time. And we'll be talking at length about the opening game, or in fact the opening two games of that season at the end of this podcast, so don't fail to miss that. Meanwhile, our first home game of this season under Leonid Slutsky ended in something of a canter, a 4-1 victory that could have been a damn sight more against a 10-man side who, even with 11, are clearly going to struggle once again this season. And actually, Andy, we couldn't have asked for a better opponent to just sort of ease into the home part of this campaign quite gently, really.
No, they were surprisingly pliant, weren't they? I do think they were possessed of an unusually high amount of attacking ambition, given the apparent gulf between the two sides. They came and gave it a real go, and you sort of want to praise them for that because it meant that we could go score loads of goals. However, it didn't really work out terribly well for them, but City deserve an awful lot of praise for it, because no matter what you're up against, you've got to do a job, you've got to make the chances, which is probably the hardest thing, and then take a few of them as well. And we won 4-1. We were always going to win that game, I think, even with 11 men, even at 1-1. It always felt as though there was such a gulf in class that sooner or later they were going to fail to keep us out again. And I thought we played really well, and 4-1 flattered Burton in the end.
Good opening goal. Great shot from Henriksen that came off the bar, and Hernandez there to nod in the rebound, although Stephen Bywater did quite well in getting quite a large part of his palm to the ball. But even though we were playing Burton Albion, who are a side who will, by their own admission, be happy with an equivalent position at the end of this season to what they got last season, we do have this habit, irrespective of which sort of City side we currently have, of letting supposedly lesser teams back into games, don't we? And we, until Burton had their man sent off, the guy who also scored the goal, Jackson Irvine, for about 10, 15 minutes or so, they were equal. And that's not right.
There's no easy games in the Championship and other cliches. It was a thoroughly entertaining game. Even the bits that were a little bit scary were entertaining. But they didn't last long, did it? I thought City were by and large always in control. But there was that sort of like brief spell of real shakiness where, you know, Burton showed, well, we're up for this. You're gonna have to beat us, and beat them we did. Hernandez in second tier football, like bacon and eggs, gin and tonic, Nigel Farage and helicopter crashes just go well together. He's one of those players that is not quite good enough to be. He's not quite good enough for the Premier League, but he's too good for the Championship. He sort of exists in this nether striking region in between. But you know, his strikes at all. You know, two shots and a diving header. It's funny, you know. I couldn't see that it was Henriksen because I was in the north stand, and I don't know if my mind's playing tricks on me, but to me, Henriksen was playing a really deep role. It felt to me that he was trying to play that quarterback role Huddleston played last year, and he didn't appear to be having a great deal of success of it. So when I actually looked back and thought it was Henriksen who had the shot, I was a little bit surprised by that.
Good shot, and I thought he played all right as well.
He was very withdrawn, Les is right.
Yeah, he was, which is a surprise because you would think that Klukas would be the more withdrawn in a defensive... in a midfield partnership. And
maybe that's something to do with Klukas being fitter. Henriksen had a large chunk of last season out, and maybe it's easier if you're still looking for your match sharpness, but you're having to play in central midfield, because we have got a lack of central midfielders at the moment. Although David Myler could easily have taken that role as well. Maybe it's easier to play that withdrawn role while you're still trying to get your fitness back.
I do wonder if had Myler been fit, that would have been his role. Not necessarily for the range of passing, and I don't associate that with Henriksen. I do associate him with him being a bit further on. I think as soon as they went down to 10 men, we didn't need to do that anymore. It became about trying to overwhelm them with numbers in midfield. So that was the point, I thought, where we pushed him further forward. But you're right, he did have a good game. It's not a criticism. It's just that's where to me, that looked like where we started him, and it just made me scratch my head. I couldn't quite understand that decision. It didn't seem the right fit for him. It didn't matter ultimately, I guess.
It didn't. I thought the midfield was an area where City completely dominated the entire game. I know Burton did have a spell where they prospered and they equalised, and it was a fantastic goal. It might even be the goal of the game. But that was never because they were getting back into the game in any area other than our back third, and that might sound stupid, but they never got themselves back in it by winning the midfield arm wrestle. They simply did it because we started fannying around on the ball a little bit in defence, which was certainly something that needs to be cut out. And they did start putting a few men further forward, but the midfield area, I thought we looked really, really accomplished. We set out well in that area, and I thought it was ours for the whole game.
It was frustrating, wasn't it? It didn't do any damage in the end, obviously, but it was frustrating that we went in at level at half time, because you look at that they got back into the game, scored a sweet goal, but then Jackson Irvine, the scorer, tripped Jared Bowen for the second time. If you watch the footage, of course, the referee, I don't think immediately remembers, despite the fact that Jackson Irvine is something of a distinctive figure, that he's already booked him. And I think the City players have to remind him that he's already got a yellow before he pulls out the second yellow and the red. But you look at the chance that Hernandez missed in the first half, where he was through on goal, a wide-angled shot, but on his correct side, and he swept it right across, completely overcompensated on the shot. That was bad enough. But then the way that Grzycki, who actually I thought had a pretty good game, all told, but despite his supposed sort of eyes looking elsewhere while he's pulling on the City kit, the way he runs through down that inside left channel, beats everybody for pace, rounds Bywater and still can't score when the goal is sort of open in front of him. It just made you wonder whether it was going to be one of those days where City, for whatever reason, couldn't capitalise on clear advantage in ability and a clear advantage in numbers.
I found Grzycki quite infuriating on Saturday. He's a player that I've really wanted to do well, and we've always praised him for his application, even when it's not gone well for him. But he was a little bit petulant on Saturday. Seemed to be constantly moaning at his teammates, Fraser Campbell in particular. That miss was just shocking. I don't know what his excuse, but then he pops up with a goal. I must admit, I thought Jared Bowen had scored that first, because they both got pretty similar haircuts from a certain distance, haven't they?
And it's also not the type of goal you might necessarily think that Grzycki would score, just coming in at the near post, determinedly winning a header. You would associate other types of goals with him, but I wouldn't have thought he was the kind of player who made that run with that kind of determination.
I want to come back to Hernandez just for a moment, because with us signing Fraser Campbell, do you think that the usefulness of Abel Hernandez has kind of been sort of underplayed going into this new season? You could say, although we've talked, and I think you're right in saying that he seems to have that kind of ability that lies somewhere between the Premier League and the Championship, some sort of non-existent league in a parallel universe. Or maybe he should just play for relegated clubs and then, look into the future, think you're going to get relegated next season, I'll go and play for you. But he could have been on that list, along with Huddleston and Robertson and Davis and everyone else, who could have gone to an allegedly bigger club, or at least a higher placed club than us in the summer, and he hasn't. Do you think actually we're underestimating just how important it is that we've still got him?
No, I don't think we're underestimating how important it is we've got him. I think we know he's a player who's going to score lots of goals at the second tier level. Perhaps it's a bit of a surprise that we've been relegated twice and nobody's come in for him, or if they've come in for him, we've not heard anything about it. And generally nothing's secretive in football, so you would expect us to know even after the fact if somebody put a bid in. He's quite a confounding player, Hernandez, because he's always the player that you think might agitate for a move, but never actually
I was just thinking the same thing, yeah.
Whereas Grzycki's clearly unhappy, thinks he's better than playing in the Premier League. playing in the Championship. He might well be, but he needs to prove it more often. And funnily enough, in a game where he scored his first goal in English football, I don't necessarily think he did on Saturday. But he just needs to shut up, stop complaining at his teammates, and start playing good football. In terms of Hernandez, I think Hernandez is really going to benefit from Fraser Campbell this season. Fraser Campbell is a very unselfish player, and he seems quite happy to put it on a plate for Hernandez many times. And if that continues throughout the season, you can imagine him getting another 20 goals like he did last time he was at this level.
But he needs to sharpen up still, doesn't he, Campbell, really?
Well, I think it was widely known when he arrived that he was nowhere near match fit, and what's the old saying? I guess you can only get match fit by playing in matches, and certainly one thing the Championship offers is no shortage of matches.
It's notable that he wasn't substituted, though, on Saturday. Now, that either means that Slutsky was trying to give him the minutes, or he doesn't plan to play him against Wolves and therefore could afford to give him 90 minutes. Maybe he isn't. You don't know from that particular decision or indecision, if you like, whether Campbell is going to be in the frame for Wolves tomorrow night, whether he's even going to be regarded as fit enough. Maybe Slutsky said to him, you're doing the full 90 minutes today, then a week of intensive training and we'll have you ready for QPR.
It's possible, I guess.
Well, you look at the players who went off. Klukas, Grzycki and who was the other player? Hernandez, immediately after his hat-trick. They're all going to start against Wolves.
Well, that could be a case of resting your three best players and making sure they're 100% ready for the Wolves match.
Once the game was won, it was obvious that he was going to take important players off.
In which case, then perhaps Campbell may start on the bench and come in with half an hour to go. The one thing I will say about him is I thought he ran himself into the ground, as well as being unselfish. He really worked hard. He didn't shirk. He's perhaps not best suited to us firing crosses into him. That's never particularly been his game.
Do you think it matters, though, that he didn't have a chance to score at all on Saturday? He didn't have a shot on goal. I don't remember him having a header on goal or anything that was ever going to be troublesome or look like sort of classic Campbell territory.
I think his game's changed. He's not on the shoulder of the defender using his pace anymore. I think he's got to be a cleverer footballer than that. And I saw a lot of clever football from him. And do you know what I really liked was, in the second half, all of the players seemed to have a grin on their faces. They were genuinely enjoying the football. I mean, Miley was just going, oh yeah, let me just ping a shot from 30 yards. And they were just laughing about it, as if they weren't playing like professional footballers who, this would really hurt. I mean,
Radio Mike was still saying that Miley should be banned from passing the ball anywhere except backwards.
Bywater, in their goal, looked like he was having a nervous breakdown. There was a point, the one, because Hernandez's second goal wasn't a particularly great strike, was it? He essentially hit it at the goalkeeper, but he put enough force on it that it squared past him, and you could see Bywater just walking along his goal line, talking to himself, berating himself. And you think that's the last thing you want from a goalkeeper. You need a goalkeeper to be able to forget anything that's gone wrong in the game, and you just thought you need a physio one. You need some, SSRIs to elevate his mood level. Otherwise, he's going to do himself some serious harm. And we hadn't stopped scoring goals at that point.
Other players that we've not mentioned, actually I say we've not mentioned, there was a brief mention there for Jared Bowen. Again, it's the Championship, but if ever we are going to see an example of a young boy giving his opportunity and grabbing it with both hands, we've got it right now with Jared Bowen. What a lovely player. Again, we take into account the opposition, but what a lovely player to watch he was at times on Saturday, wasn't he?
You do say nice things, don't you?
I do, I'm a nice
What a
person.
lovely player, but he doesn't look out of place, does he? He doesn't look like a youngster who is going to have to take a few months to actually sort of find his feet in the first team. He looks as though he's been playing in the first team for a little while, and that in itself is perhaps the highest compliment that you can give him. I didn't notice him an awful lot during the game, but a lot of that, I mean that in a slightly positive way in some regards, because he didn't stand out as the weak link anywhere at all. There was other players who stood out more. Grzycki, for better or worse, was probably the most eye-catching of the 11, but Bowen just went about his business. He had a comfortable, quiet, efficient 7 out of 10 kind of afternoon.
But he changed the game because he alone got Jackson Irvine Jackson, whatever his name is. He got him sent off, didn't he? With two sort of like petulant fouls, and that was all about Bowen seeing the ball and just pelting forward, because he's quite a tidy player. I mean, not just for the goal, and you did get the sensation that as soon as he went off, that was the game done for those, because they had a lot of workman-like players and an admirable players. And I loved seeing Lloyd Dyer. Lloyd Dyer,
Wasn't the guy we had on loan from Everton a few years ago? Was it from Everton? I'm thinking Hope Akpan. Wasn't he playing for Burton on Saturday as well?
I didn't notice him.
And Bywater, of course, was on loan at City nearly 20 years ago, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was in 99, 2000.
So he's obviously knocking on a bit, Bywater. Max Clark. We hear all this stuff about he's a square peg in a round hole as a left back, and again we remember who the opposition were. But he looked like a left back to me. And when you look at the overlapping side of things, maybe he didn't have an awful lot of defending to do. But when you look at the overlapping side of it, he put in some really decent crosses with his left foot on the overlap. Some of them first time, some of them he had time to look up. There was no question of him coming in onto his right foot. He swung in left-sided crosses with his left foot and looked the part.
Yeah, he did have a good game. He'll certainly face sterner tests than Burton Albion, but he didn't collapse. You know, he's acquitted himself pretty well. I thought early on he was quite reticent to go forward, and maybe that's, you know, you're considering you don't want the gaps behind Grzyski to be exploited. But I suppose once the team goes down to 10 men, the chances to do that are quite limited. So City were emboldened to sort of go forward, and he acquitted himself really well. Tomorrow against Wolves will be a different test, but can't fault him for what he's done so far.
We wondered last week, didn't we, if starting a home game and winning a home game might be a good thing for Clark. And I'm sure he feels now like he belongs in the first team, and even though he's only made a handful of appearances, he must feel like this is his opportunity and that he's taking it well.
If there was one fullback who was noticeable, it was probably Ola Reina, because he had a bit of a yin-yang schizophrenic game, because there was points where he was devastating going forward. He was the one that put the cross in for Grzyski, but he was frustrating in defence. I pointed out to my missus, I said, I really like his composure. And then, like, with a nanosecond, it dwelled on the ball too long, and we were going against it. Our good friend JR made the point that he's largely played developmental football, which probably isn't going to have the same cut and thrust or urgency as the Championship. Maybe that's the type of thing that, you know, they'll not race at you and they'll let you play the ball out. But, you know, if Burton are going to survive, they're going to need to be up for it for every game, and so that was probably a good lesson for Ola Reina, that he needs to be a little less complacent defensively.
I'm always a fan of a player who spends an entire half of football with his socks down far enough so you can actually see his shin pads for the whole game. That's a player of confidence, and people go on about strong footballers having thighs like tree trunks. He had calf muscles like tree trunks. That boy's an athlete, isn't he?
He didn't look like a young player, did he? Sometimes they look still a bit scrawny, but he looked as though he's been playing professional football for a long time. And I thought getting him forward in the second half was I'm sure it's an obvious thing for Slutsky to do, to tell his full-backs, right, you've got a bit more freedom to push up there, going 4-4-1, get yourselves forward and cause a little bit of mischief if you can. But he did it, and that left-footed cross, that's a real bit of skill. That suggests that he's not one-footed at all, because to judge it, float it like that, and to have the confidence to want to do it, that all bodes well.
When it comes to ball-playing centre-backs, our history isn't outstanding. Richard Jobson, James Chester. There aren't many others who you could say look comfortable enough on a football.
Matt Hocking?
Well, he was a right-back to start with. But they don't look comfortable enough on a football to be able to move out of defence and actually play a game as an emergency midfielder, for example. Michael Hector looks very comfortable with a football. And there was one moment in the first half where he did that trick that only really cocky footballers, irrespective of what position they play, do, which is where the ball comes towards them, they point in one direction and look in that direction as if to say, that's where I'm going to immediately play this ball first time, and then promptly swept it in completely the opposite direction without even looking where it was going, and it went straight to Max Clark's feet. Now, he's not going to do that on a regular basis. He's not going to do that against better teams, you would hope not, again, at least, than Burton Albion. But there was just something about that lad's confidence.
Do you want to talk about his thighs?
No, I didn't.
I'll tell you what
I wasn't talking about anus thighs. I was talking about his calves. Now, keep up. Better than yours.
I did like Hector's poise. What a poise! Yeah, confidence. He uses it, doesn't it? I thought he was really good. He was impressive in stature, in poise, and in performance. He didn't do anything wrong. Excellent. Yeah, I think Rick Skelton had said I'd be looking at inquiring how you'd get him on a permanent deal now. And given that he's sort of bounced around a bit, that's the type of thing that in January you'd like to make permanent. Depends on who owns the club, I guess.
If you look at a really experienced sort of grizzled pro like Michael Dawson, he's got this kid Hector alongside him, who clearly has got a bit of experience at this level. He's got heaven only knows how many different loan spells over his career. Do you think he's the sort of player that would give Dawson nightmares or give Dawson reassurance?
Well, there was a couple of times when he covered for Dawson.
I was going to say, his pay, if I was Dawson, knowing that my legs were on the way out and I had someone rapid next to me, I'd probably regard it overall as being of my benefit, because he's going to cover. I can't remember the incident you're alluding to, Les, actually, but it sounds like the sort of thing that could happen frequently.
One or two people on Periscope are saying we should be putting in a bid now because he's not going to get, this is Hector, he's not going to get into the Chelsea team, and obviously there are huge connections now between the ownership at Chelsea and the management at Hull City, so why not?
Why not, indeed?
You would wonder how much Chelsea would probably want for him, given that he's never played a first-team game for them, or if he has, he's not been noticed playing a first-team game for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've not exactly got much depth in that position anymore. The last couple of seasons, the question was, is Harry Maguire going to become a regular starter if we played without Davis? Like, is Davis going to get back? Is Dawson going to get back? And all of a sudden we have an absolute dearth in that position.
But we've sold 3 centre-backs anyway in the summer, haven't we? Davis, Bruce and Maguire have all gone.
And I would really like to own a really good centre-half, so it would be prudent to try and bar that boy at the earliest opportunity, not let him massively impress and allow Chelsea to make a load of money next summer. I mean, granted, it's 2 games into the season. It's probably a little bit too early to say he's going to be a superstar, but decent player.
Talking of Alex Bruce, well done to him, by the way. He scored on his debut for Bury at the weekend, but not just on his debut. It was 1 hour after he signed. He went straight into the team. He was allowed to go straight in because his registration was easy because he was a free agent. He went straight into the team and scored literally 1 hour after signing for the club. That's fantastic.
You'd still have him back, wouldn't you, Matt?
Wouldn't you? At championship level, even if it was short term?
For a bit of cover, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. But he's got
the one person from the starting 11 we haven't mentioned is Sam Klukas, and a good, steady, stout match for a player who's now providing the experience in the centre of our midfield. And bids are coming in. Now, what was it from Burnley initially? 5 million? It's been turned down, mercifully, but you can't help but think that, Burnley have clearly got the money. You can't help but think that if Burnley were to come back with a couple of million or so more, there'll come a point where Rehab's fingers get itchy yet again.
You'd suspect a bit of 10 million would see him out the door, and then you're really going to see our manager's patience tested, because as he said twice, it's twice now, he said it again after the game, the supermarket is closed. He clearly doesn't want to see his team lose anymore, because he's trying to build something and he's showing the possibilities that he might be able to put something together that's quite special. I don't think City have quite got the personality sussed yet. We don't know what they're going to look like in the next couple of months, but now's that time where we can gel the team and sort of get some understanding. I don't really think we can afford to be losing another player. I personally would like to see us build around Sam Klukas and use him as a midfield linchpin. I know he's been fairly quiet the last 2 games, but he's still been very, very effective. That goal he created for Hernandez's third was just brilliant. Tried a pass, got blocked, took the ball, confidently put it straight into Hernandez's stride, and there's your goal. He's a game changer.
And for anybody who wonders whether Klukas' abilities and usefulness are in any way overstated, he got votes in the PFA Player of the Year awards last season from his fellow pros, not just from City players, but from other pros in the Premier League. He got votes. He didn't get anywhere near enough to get in the top 5 or the Team of the Year or anything like that, but he got votes. He was noticed by the players as well as by the coaches and the managers and the scouts in the Premier League last season. He's got fans in the game.
The only thing I think that's keeping him here is perhaps a sense of humility, having been chewed up by football before, and then he sort of had to hit the reset button and start again. Maybe he's thinking, is it too early in my redevelopment to jump to the Premier League straight away? But you could imagine him thriving at a club like Burnley. If he takes the attitude that other players have, such as Curtis Davis when he said, I don't want to be part of that mess again, then you'd understand him walking. But I think there's just enough humility about Clucas where I don't think he'll push for a move. I think the worry is that our owner, vice chairman, whatever you want to call him, will just sell him from under Slutsky's nose.
And the worry is that someone bigger than Burnley comes in, at which point,
if it's somebody bigger than, if it's somebody bigger than Burnley, then we're in a Robertson situation, aren't we? Where you take the money and wish him good luck because it's denying a good player a proper big career move. Even though Robertson didn't actually get in the team at Watford on Saturday or even on the bench.
Well, suppose a team that can challenge for UEFA Cup qualification came in for him. There's no guarantee that's going to happen next summer if he's still in the Championship with Hull City. He may think that this is the time to move on if a bigger club comes in. I get Slutsky's point that there's not a huge benefit to moving to Burnley, although there's obviously benefits, if only because they're run properly and they're in the Premier League. They're probably going to stay in the Premier League. That's a move up, but not by a vast quantity. But if a move that represents a significant elevation in his career is offered to him, how can you blame him?
I suppose you ask yourself the question as far as where Clucas's ambition lies. If City got promoted this season, would we be able to keep up with Burnley next season? Because I think Burnley are going to stay up this season.
It depends on the ownership situation, doesn't it? I think with different owners, it's possible. There's no reason why City can't establish themselves in the Premier League like Burnley have done. I know they've got sensible football club things like their own academy and their own training facilities and stuff like that. But those things can be put in place by good owners. You know, we're not beyond redemption. Those are things that can be put in place. Right now, if I was a footballer critically assessing, can I make the next step with Hull City, I would probably say no. But once again, you come back to the humility factor with Clucas. He's been chewed up by football already.
What about players coming in? I mean, as well as Max Clark's done, you'd like to think that a left back of some experience is on the radar. Covering defence, covering central midfield, depending on whether you think Diamandi is up to the task of backing up either Hernandez or Campbell, then possibly cover up front as well. I mean, you can make a huge shopping list given how many players need replacing from the ones we've sold. But even if we're looking at the basics, what and indeed who do we need?
Well, you do have to bring in a left back, even if it's not to take Max Clark's place. You've got to give him some competition and you've got to have some cover. It's a long season in the Championship. Players will get injured, players will be out of form, players will get suspended. You can't not have a natural left back at the club. I mean, you know, there's talk about Musa coming from Leicester, but unless we're getting him on loan, and I don't see what the benefit to Leicester is in that arrangement. I think our owners have knacked Leicester about enough for the, you know, maybe that's been made right by the Maguire deal. I don't know.
Or the Jakupovic deal as well.
So I don't know. I don't see us spending big money. I don't see us spending anything over £6, £7, £8 million. And I think if you're making a serious investment, that's what you'd need to do. I suspect we're looking at free agent left backs. I don't know quite how good any of those on the market are.
It does feel like that. I can't imagine City spending more than £1 million or £2 million on one single player. And it just worries me that we're going to be thin in terms of the squad. I think the first team looks like it's going to be okay. It's going to win a few games and play some decent football, and I'm happy with that.
And there's still bodies to come back who aren't involved in the first team picture.
There's a couple.
Onabanjo being one, Mason being another.
But we need a left back and we need a centre half. The players, those two are not in the areas that I think are the most critical to get a bit of strength, because we've got 46 league games to plough our way through this season. We know full well that the Championship's a merciless grind, and what happened 2 seasons ago, we fell away towards the end, and we're much more likely, if we do get ourselves in a position to challenge, I still don't think that's massively likely, but it's more likely than I thought a couple of weeks ago. The biggest threat to that is the fact we're just not going to be able to sustain it in the new year with the current weakness of the squad.
Okay. Our gaffer, head coach, he's very good at half-time team talks, clearly, because we've had 2 second halves of real upturning quality after disappointing or first halves, or at the very least, coming from Saturday, a first half where more could have been achieved to what was already achieved. But this is just a very, very convivial figure all told, isn't he?
Well, if you're cynical, you can say he grew up in the Soviet Union, so he knows a thing or two about propaganda. I'm a bit more kindly.
They were German. I see what you mean. Sorry.
Inclined to think of him like that, but the man is a charmer. The man knows how to say the right thing.
The Nigel Havers of football.
If he was in charge of club fan relations, what would we have to complain about? You know, the man is keen to know about football, about the club's history. He says things like, "Oh, the best thing about a 4-1 win was the crowd, you know, asking for a wave," and just that little curtsy he does. It's just amazing.
If we just get him and David Myler to do all the club communiques, then we'd all be fine, wouldn't we?
Pretty much do, don't they?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and having a selfie taken with Nigel Clough at the match as well.
Yeah, fantastic. It's really hard not to love the bloke.
There is a rumour that he is the man waiting to go to Chelsea for when Conte finally spits his dummy out.
It just feels like a mischievous rumour. You know, I think friendship with Abramovich, I'm sure he's friends with a lot of Russian coaches. I'm sure that's the kind of people he has on his yacht, as well as women of ill repute. But no, I don't buy it. I know they've had moves before, like when they brought in Avram Grant, which seemed like a bit of a left field move. But I don't know. I imagine Chelsea having somebody slightly more proven. You know, I mean, it's a funny one with Slutsky. He's managed Russia. That's not an unimportant job.
But last time they took on an international manager, he failed spectacularly because it was after a goalless draw against City that he got the sack. So, I mean, sometimes guys who've done well at international level don't always fit snugly into big club environments, as Scolari proved. But anyway, that's all huge speculation.
I would feel a little bit heartbroken if Slutsky left now.
Somebody's just said that Slutsky's been booked already by Hull City Council to switch on the Christmas lights this year. Fantastic. Hull City Council books a Hull City manager. The Ehab would have a fit. What do you think of Slutsky then? I mean, what about tactically and in terms of leadership, as well as this wonderful personality that we're seeing, but in terms of the way the players seem to be reacting around him, what have you noticed?
I think the jury's out on the tactics so far because I think that the recovery at Aston Villa had just owed more to us being better, and that can be down to motivation rather than any specific organisational alteration. We didn't really change a great deal against Burton beyond the obvious, which was to commit more men forward because they're going to be committing more men back. So I'm not quite sure what he's got in mind, what he's got up his sleeve for the rest of the season, but I'm looking forward to finding out. What I do think is that personality does matter to an extent in management, and if you consider perhaps the anti-Slutsky, which was Nigel Pearson, even after a couple of years of overachieving at City, hardly anybody liked him. Whereas all of a sudden, after just 2 games, we're all engaged with Slutsky. We all want to buy into what he wants to do.
You've got a question over...
It shouldn't matter, but it does to an extent because he's clearly got an affable personality, and you want to like him and you want him to succeed.
I'm not sure I'd use Nigel Pearson as the example there, because I always get the feeling, and what I've heard from people is that he has this grouse-like atmosphere to the press and out of the club, but in the club, players tend to like him. I think with Pearson, where it fell short was once he knew he was going, I don't think he spent any time sort of saying thanks for all your efforts, lads, but I'm going. I think he just went. I would go with Jan Molby as the example there, because there was a man who may have had some innovative ideas, may have had a lot to sort of impart, but he made players bristle. You know, he brought in Ian Ashby as captain, and Ian Ashby pretty much turned against him straight away, you know, because he was locking players in the dressing room for like half an hour, 45 minutes after games. So there's a man who, regardless of his talent, just lost everybody. And you're right, but Slutsky's affability means people are prepared to buy in and give him longer, even when it maybe does go a little bit wrong.
And yet sometimes the abrasive figures are still successful and don't really care whether you like him or not. I mean, we know people who still can't stand Peter Taylor, who led us to 2 promotions and fell out with the fans on a couple of occasions.
But he hit the ground running, and he never stopped. It was pretty much constant upwardly mobileness under Taylor until we sort of like hit like a bit of a glass ceiling, and that makes a difference. Instant success will buy you a little bit of time. And when you're abrasive and irascible like Jan Molby was, it didn't work, and so people turned against him quickly.
Sorry, and that's the other thing I would say about the Nigel Pearson example, which is that when he took over the club, we were in serious financial trouble, but a lot of supporters were drunk on Premier League football for 2 years and maybe couldn't see the wood for the trees and just expected us to walk the Championship with the same players, or if Pearson did bring players in, for them to hit the ground running, and it just was never ever going to be that simple. And Pearson...
It never was.
It was never going to be that simple, and Pearson proved it wasn't going to be that simple while still doing a sturdy job. But, you know, he wasn't brought into a club that was liking itself very much, and therefore he probably took on some of that atmosphere and came across as a very dour figure in public, because it was a dour place to be at the time.
It was, and he did reflect that in his public pronouncements. To clarify on Pearson, I think we've all heard the same stories, that he was quite genial in person at the club. I think it's his public personality to the fans that was a worry, whereas I don't think we're ever going to have that concern with Slutsky. Now,
we've come into this season with Slutsky in the same situation in a way that we came in with Pearson, in that we'd just been relegated from the Premier League. But when we got relegated from the Premier League in 2010, we were skint and we were on our uppers. Now, whatever the financial situation of the club, in the sense that's beyond the playing kitty, if you like, it's not comparable to what we were going through in 2010. And Slutsky's new. He's new to English football, he's new to the club, but he's new to our game here, full stop, and he's just loving the opportunity, and it's coming across that way.
Yeah, there's a genuineness to the man that really shines through. You can't fake that kind of thing.
I don't think he can.
Let's say we've got stuffed up Millwall on the Tuesday night.
but it's precisely the money in the affability bank that is banked for the, you know, in racing, that's going to get him through. You know, we are going to lose games in the championships. It's inevitable. Teams very rarely run away with it. It's a game where pretty much anyone can beat anyone.
Okay.
More cliches.
Talking of Tuesday night, it's not against Millwall, but it's at home to Wolves. Considering what was said about Fraser Campbell earlier, are we actually expecting any changes to the starting 11 tomorrow night?
I think you have to change when you're playing on a Tuesday after the Saturday. I think we'll see some change, and we've hinted at some of that. Well, you know, it could be that Campbell starts the game but doesn't finish it, or he doesn't start the game and he finishes it. I think we will have to shuffle it a little bit.
Diamandi maybe to start instead of Campbell then? He's the only other option if we're going to play 2 up front.
He's not exactly shone so far. He's not given Slutsky a reason to start him.
I think it might be a prospect that Myler might start ahead of Henriksen as well.
I think Myler's really, really lacking fitness. I don't see him starting a game at this point.
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we don't start with the same side, and that Campbell's told you're on for 55 to 60 minutes, then you go run yourself nuts and you can have tomorrow off. The Diamandi for Campbell seems to be just too much of a weakening of the side.
Well, we have got Kevin Stewart to factor in at some point.
And it's I don't know whether it is formidable opposition. It's our 3rd Midlands club in a row at the start of the season, which feels a bit peculiar to me. But I don't know whether they are formidable opposition. You can never tell with anybody. I mean, Villa are still the favourites to win the league, but they were ordinary against City on the opening day of the season, and they got stuffed by Cardiff at the weekend. But maybe you just want... Slutsky knows from the fit players he's got who his starting 11 is, or his best 11 is availability-wise, and so maybe he's just going to stick with that.
I think they are formidable opposition. You don't see many Championship clubs go take who they want from Porto. You know, that's a real statement of intent, and you know, they've got a very confident manager. They're clearly being backed. I do see this as being one of the most formidable tests we can face, and it depends whether there'll be I mean, they played away the other day, and they played very expansive attacking football. I don't think they're going to go anywhere with any sense of fear. I think they're going to go and think we're going to take our football, and this is where Slutsky's going to earn his money tactically, because he's going to have to watch film of those and think, right, we need to negate this, we need to do this, remove those players, and this is going to be really entertaining. I think it's fun. It's going to be great.
And if he does start the same 11, then maybe he's got one eye on what he's going to do with the team come QPR at the weekend as well. Now, that's not an easy prospect, going to Loftus Road at the weekend, especially after a busy week of 2 home games in 4 days, and with what is not quite a skeleton squad, but certainly a limited squad in terms of availability. He's just got to shuffle his pack carefully, hasn't he?
I think you've got to think in. You can't just think about your next fixture all the time, can you? In the Championship, you've always got to be conscious of the fact that there's probably a Tuesday night coming up soon, and bloody hell, there's one the week after as well in the League Cup. So I just don't know if you can simply get one. You can't go one game at a time. That I'm afraid, Les, is a cliche you're not allowed to have tonight, because you've got to think about.
It wasn't a cliche I was going to proffer.
Well, good.
But I don't imagine. I imagine we'll plan for QPR after tomorrow rather than.
Do you think he'll have an eye on it though?
He might have an eye on it just because he might know, providing there's no injuries as a direct result of tomorrow night's game, he might already know who's going to be fit enough for QPR, or who isn't going to be fit enough for QPR if they play tomorrow. He knows his team for tomorrow night, you would assume. So he may already know who's going to be fit after tomorrow night to take on QPR. So possibly. I think you have to look. It's not far away.
We're going to see Diamande in some extended.
He scored at QPR last time he went there, although he didn't know anything about it, of course. But he did score the winner at QPR a couple of years ago.
I like Diamande. There's something I like about him, but
it's not his goal scoring ability, though, is it?
Well, a year ago, we were marvelling at a double overhead kick between him and Hernandez. You know, that was beating Leicester.
But it was Hernandez who actually made contact with the ball. You were
It
admiring an air overhead kick.
But it looked good, whereas Diamande didn't look good on Saturday.
Okay. Right, so that's the present. Let's talk about the past, because 10 years ago, City got promoted to the Premier League for the first time, and through the course of this season, we're doing sort of anniversary look-backs over that season. So we're into the 3rd week of August. It was on the 11th of August 2007 that season started, and there was absolutely no sign of what was to come when the final whistle went in the game between City and Plymouth Argyle at the Circle. Was there, Andy?
It felt like nothing had changed from the season before, possibly because we just lost 3-2 at home to Plymouth again. But it just felt as though we were in for another season of largely identical struggle with the same underperforming players. Nobody seriously expected Plymouth to challenge either.
I expected City to lose when I knew Danny Coles was lining up instead of Michael Turner.
Well, that's the reason that game is notorious.
Michael Turner, it started very shaky and had floppy hair the previous season, but ended the season really strongly.
He still ended that season as the Player of the Year, didn't he, 2007, even though he started really poorly. But yeah, I remember us being all in the pub together, and we all got our mobile alerts that everybody got back then with the team on it, and everyone was double taking. I mean, this new centre back we've bought, Wayne Brown, isn't in the team, and neither is Michael Turner. So the back four that day, Ricketts and Dawson as fullbacks, as you would hope for and expect, but the centre backs were Damien Delaney and Danny Coles. And Danny Coles, you see, I've always tried to defend Danny Coles a little bit. I can defend better than he can a lot of the time. But I don't think he was ever cast as an out-and-out villain. He was injured a lot of the time. He played a couple of very good games for City. I remember him playing at Hillsborough when he first joined under Peter Taylor, and a couple of extraordinary goal-line clearances. But he is remembered, one, for the horror show against Ipswich the previous season, and then getting back into the team on that opening day of the season ahead of Turner, who was fit. He was on the bench. He warmed up in the second half and had his name chanted by the City fans on that opening day. And Phil Brown, to his credit, acknowledged his mistake straight away.
It was a mistake though, because we shipped 3 goals on the opening day, and
Coles was responsible for certainly
4 of them.
I think he was responsible for 2. I think he was marking Rory Fallon for their equaliser, not their equaliser, the goal that put them ahead right on half time. He was certainly at fault for Ebanks Blake's winner 10 minutes from the end. But we started that game so well. Dino scored after 3 minutes. His first full debut for the club since 1991, and he scored after just 3 minutes.
Was that how the ball hit the post and he hit the rebound? Because the next goal we scored, I seem to remember, was Dino had a penalty saved and Marnie was
Dean Marnie
to respond in it, and he stuck that in.
Yeah, so we lost 3-2 on the opening day, and we all grumbled that nothing had changed.
Do you know who looked ace that day? Peter Halmosey.
Yeah.
He played really well for Plymouth.
I think we signed him on the basis of that performance, because we played Plymouth twice more that season, both in January, and we'll come to that when we get to January, obviously. But one was in the FA Cup, which we lost, and the other was in the league, which we won. But 3 days later, we had a very enjoyable evening out in Crewe, didn't we, Andrew?
Yes, it's an unusual sentence to construct that map, but we actually did.
If you're not a train spotter,
I was going to say, I say enjoyable. I'll put it slightly in inverted commas because we did have Cropper in the back seat of the car that night, and that enjoyable,
memorable.
memorable, yes.
Ali,